So the time is 6:30 PM and I call this budget workshop number 2 and special called meeting of the Red Oak City Council to order. Let it be known that notice has been posted in accordance to Texas Government Code Section 551. And that all council members and staff are in attendance to do consider everything about the budget and then go on to regular session items. So, Mr. Fuller, we are going to do our budget workshop and I think you're going to lead us off.
So just to go back and recap from our last workshop, we have everything in there that was in there previously, but we do have some changes. And those changes are because of a rate or a revenue change. So we got the certified values from the appraisal district a couple of days late, which is bad, but the good part is that it raised additional funds when we got them. So the de minimis rate basically is a 4-cent decrease, but it still allows an additional $670,000 on the general fund revenue side. So of that $670,000, what we did in trying to plan for the future with in a couple of years when we're having to hire firefighters, we wanted to try to save a good bit of that because we can use fund balance and so forth, but fund balance runs out. If we have the M&O side available though, then that is a recurring revenue that comes in. So we went back in of that 670,000, we added 2 positions back in. One was the 3rd police officer, which allows Chief Wolf to do the district for the movie theater and the commercial area going over on the highway, which he wasn't going to be able to do with the 2 officers. And we added a part-time receptionist that can float either up in UB or in the main reception area. But that's a part-time position. The other thing we did was where we had all of the positions at 80% funding for the year. Because, you know, obviously you're not going to get everybody hired day one, but we went ahead and funded them for the full year so that if the budget is approved, we can begin the hiring process and hopefully get the majority of them hired sooner rather than later. May still have some savings because there'll be some that don't get hired till November, December, or so forth, but at least that gives us the opportunity to do that. Then of the remaining, there's an additional $382,977 of that 670. So what we did with that, so that we have that free next year, so that we don't have to scrape trying to move into the new 15 firefighters, is we spent that on capital items. And those capital items were, we had to buy an additional patrol car, uniform, equipment, and so forth for that patrol officer. That was 91,000. And then we had 2 TxDOT projects. One is the aesthetics for the over the road overpass that we had looked at. And the other was an older agreement that we have where we did a right-of-way purchase agreement with them from a few years back. So that amounted to $191,912. And these are all one-time expenses. And then the last one was animal control. The architects came back and said, you may want to put an additional $100,000 towards the remodel so that you have plenty of contingency. So we added the 100,000 back into the contingency for the animal control improvements. So that was it on the general fund. If you remember, towards the end of the meeting, we had that $648,000 generator that was left out. So we are moving that into water sewer impact fees. So that's totally paid for out of the impact fees. And then under water sewer, we had to add an additional 50,000 to water purchases because I think we got either that day or that next day from the budget, we got a water rate increase from Dallas Water. So, and that's not something that, will get revenues to offset. It was just pure rate increase. So we added that to water sewer also, and then I think it was a dozer blade and a, set of tracks for the skid steer that we put back into the drainage fund. So everything you saw last time with those changes are where we're at today. We have some additional things to go through with additional CO bonds and other projects like we had on that one sheet at the last, where we were talking about several of these unfunded pieces. But I want to make sure everybody's good and understands where we're at on this first before we move into that, and see if there's any questions or comments on it.
Yes, I have a question. In the event that $100,000 isn't used for the animal shelter, what would happen to it?
It just goes back to fund balance.
Okay. This is not a motion, but I would love to see if we could consider, I know we mentioned one full-time position and two part-time positions for the animal shelter. If that 100,000 can possibly guarantee a full-time position with those two part-time positions.
So we don't have one full-time and two part-time.
It was either or.
It was either or.
Is it possible to make both of them with, if the 100,000 isn't used? And maybe not this budget, but
Well,
I would say that will be.
moving forward, yeah.
Continue.
yeah, that would be,
One time.
yeah, this is a one,
One time,
we
okay.
could. But you just know and understand that you're dropping that $383,000 moving forward down to 280.
Correct. I understand.
So, but we can look at that when we get to that point and see.
Thank you.
So with the appraised values coming down, their recommendation to get down to the de minimis is 4 cents less. But because of the increased growth, I'm just trying to recap. Increased growth, we're still gonna end up with 670,000 more than what we had predicted.
Right.
And so that was gonna be paired out with what you had laid out just then, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, and then that 380,000, that was from what?
That was part of that 670,000.
Okay.
But it's part of it that
That's
is
a
not
one-time,
recurring. It's
yeah.
one-time capital expense.
Okay.
Any other questions on that part?
No questions.
So you want to hand out the sheets and pull the deal up on the screen so they can see. So one other big thing that came up since the budget meeting. If you remember, we were looking into water tower. So they looked into it and they figured out, yes, we need to move ahead. And to do that, and this is average. So we know we need it at this point. We know we need to go ahead and do design and move into construction. The one thing that they're not totally sure of is what size. We're thinking it's going to be about 1.5 million. So originally, we were going to have about 1.25 million for just the city general needs. And then if Google did their second and third phases, then that would bump that up $1 million to 2.25. And then they were going to pay the additional expansion, that extra million, 1 MGD. So we finally got from Google that no, they're not going to do water cooled on phase 2 and 3. They're going to do air cooled on phase 2 and 3. So that's going to put us down to the 1.25, but it probably is going to end up being about 1.5 with our growth rate plus phase 1 on Google. While they're not doing phase 2 and 3 with water, they're increasing water a little bit on phase 1 for Google. So we believe that extra 250,000 gallons is probably going to be warranted. So they were looking, engineering was looking at from 8 million to 12 million based on the 2.25. So we plugged in 10 million for the tank, but then you have the associated lines that the tank just sitting there does no good without putting in these additional lines. So it looks like 13 million is what we're looking at for the Dobbins elevated storage.
And that's a need that's right now.
Critical, yes.
What's anticipated for time? This is bond money, correct?
It would have to be bond money, one way or the other. But time wise, it'll take about a year to do the design and about a year to year and a half, Scott, on the construction.
It was. Should be about 6 months on the design.
Okay, so total of 2 years for completion.
Yeah, they projected it being online under this schedule, basically April of 26.
So what we looked at is typically if we had utility rate structures like normal cities without having the TRA sky high fees, that would be a water sewer bond type project. But if we were to try to do $13 million from water sewer, that would put, and this is just for this isn't including any of the other CIP projects and so forth that you all looked at earlier in the budget year for things that are already needed. This is just for the elevated storage would increase, and this is again preliminary, they haven't done a full study. But it's looking like 25 to 30% increase on the water rates, which our rates are already terribly expensive. So, but we know we have to do it. So what we looked at was we have some more capacity to issue debt at this point, since the de minimis brought the tax rate down 4 cents, we could still stay below, not much, but a small amount lower than our current tax rate, be able to issue the debt to install the elevated storage at 13 million, to do improvements to the senior citizen center, to do that road culvert crossing there on Red Oak Road, the one that's sinking down, to do the extra fire engine, to do the erosion control at that one bridge at Pratt Road, and to do the gun range, the training building, the parking, and the EVOC pad. So that would put us at about 15.6 million. To get a bit above that, I think Hilltop was looking at about 16 million, which gives us a little bit of contingency for those projects. Doing that with that 4 cents, and just next year, not following years, but just next year, if we had a 3.49, I think, % increase in our improved values to the city, then that would cover all of what we already talked about, plus this tranche of projects here. And I think, Gloria, we only had 1 year in the last 10 years that we were below that 3.5, and we're averaging what?
Last 2 years have jumped up pretty high. This year, our values increased 31% and last year 29%. Before that, it's pretty consistent around 12 to 14%.
So that's a pretty conservative growth rate, but the backup plan is if for some reason we didn't hit it that first year, then over a couple of years, we would definitely hit it. And we also have 114 days of fund balance when we're required to have 30. So if we got into a situation where we had to supplement to make that first payment until we hit that 3.5, we could supplement it out of fund balance so that we know we get our payment. So that's, and
excuse me, also, we talked about, because we're not putting this debt on the revenue side, water sewer, that if we did a need to, water sewer could contribute to help pay the debt service off for the water tower. So it wouldn't be directly applied to the rates, but we could use water sewer money to help offset the debt service, especially if we got into a bind.
If it's available. When it's not available, obviously you're in a position where you're not affecting your rates, but if you can pay back some of it over time, then that'd be great too. But there's a couple of things that a city has to have. It's infrastructure and emergency safety. And that's kind of what we're focused on right here, more than anything with that water tower, is if you don't have water, you don't have anything. So any thoughts on that?
So at this 15.6 million, that puts the tax rate close to but under what it is today, but still above the de minimis.
That's correct.
Got it.
Well, the de minimis is just on your M and O set.
Okay, that's
So,
right.
yeah, so your de minimis is what affects your M and O. It ultimately affects your total tax rate.
Yeah.
But your debt rate is not limited by. that,
Okay, thanks
the de
for,
minimis.
yeah, clarifying that. Okay. And the rest of the items you have listed here are the other items that were up for consideration for funding with that difference that
That's right.
are not
and-
making the list, basically.
That's right. And we talked to Chief Blanton and Chief Wolf, and, you know, on the fire side, they think they can probably last a little bit longer. They don't want to take it off the list, obviously. But they think for another year or two, they can continue training where they're at. But with the PD, they are just backed up all the time and very seldom have availability at good times. So we wanted to continue on and expand it later with the burn houses and so forth for the fire department.
If we could afford it and we've got the money for it, I don't see why we don't go ahead and do this.
Which one did? The 15.6?
So it is with a bond.
Yeah.
And, Mr.
Jorge.
Jorge is here from Hilltop that can, if you have specific questions on the calculations on why they think that we can do that bonding capacity, then we can answer those for you.
Or part probably what the interest rate would be paying.
Yeah. Okay.
But, we can get, if we're growing, we need to get.
Gloria, do you have that sheet on a computer? Or you can just pass them out.
Part of Hilltop Securities, part of the team that represents Red Oak. Myself,
Speak up.
Bonus, and Andre Ayala.
I've got handouts, Mayor Council, if you need them.
This is the scenario that I'm referencing right now where we discussed the annual CIP and then in page 2 is going to be a summary of the funding amounts. So as far as interest rate, another question came up. Red Oak's a AA credit. What we do is we go to our desk, our bond desk, and ask what would a AA bond price typical get. But we do add 0.50 basis points to that.
Because we're going to continue to see some sort of upward trends. We just had the 25 basis point hike by the Fed. There's another talk about another one in September.
Yep.
We need to budget for some movement there as you're doing your budget and make sure we hit the budget that you're working with. So we're looking at 4.5% for the certificates. You wouldn't lock in that rate until, assuming you move forward today, until November. So we got to budget a little bit of movement there.
That's a good rate.
For the AA, there's a lot of demand for AA paper, Texas paper, so you're going to get a lot of attention on that, which gets you an effective interest rate. Not what it used to be, but at 4% today, but we're budgeting 0.5 to that. And on the tax note, we're budgeting a 4.25. That's a 7-year instrument. But that's a little different from your open market transaction. That one is, we're gonna look for institutional investors, so banks. Include your depository and ask them for bids, and then we'll come back, assuming you move forward with this plan, we'll come back with the tax note. And eventually the certificates. So you're not entering into a tax note today or a certificate that would come later down when you adopt the budget and the tax note and then the certificates. It's a little bit of a longer process. You have a notice period and so on, so that would happen in November.
Right, but we do have to determine if that's the plan we want to go forward with, because that obviously will affect the tax rate and how you all propose and approve the tax rates. And am I right on this, Jorge? We still have 5 years of $3 million tax notes already in this plan. And this is with no growth other than that first year.
That's.
No, so they've already I think we talked about this at the last meeting too. It's the same thing. You still have the $3 million tax note, but I think they have it increasing every year to be able to cover those inflation.
That's right. So this all assumes that you're gonna continue to do an annual CIP for a tax note, right? A bunch of different, for all your projects, your annual project. We're taking that into
Street
account when we're looking at this certificate of obligation. And we do at 0.25 each year, so 475. If you look at that second sheet in 2028, we budgeted 525. That's not realistic today, but we want to make sure that we're ultra conservative when we run these numbers. And then the growth required to cash flow of this next year is 3.2% of your tax base, which we believe is conservative. You grew 31% this year, 27% the year before. 3% is something I think the city would achieve.
Inflation is running over 4%, well over 4. That doesn't, we don't need any growth, period, just for the inflation to kick us up over the 3.5%.
That's right. Something we have to take into account, rising costs, rising rates. So we believe a 0.25% basis point annual increases. It's a good number for budgeting purposes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Council, any questions on that?
Demonstrating we can afford it, basically.
Well, that's it in a nutshell, I guess. If there's no other questions, we can move into the regular session.
So you said the minimum is plus 4 cents. Compared with the 16,
Right.
but what was, do we know what the minimum is gonna be?
It's 4 cents.
Well, you know what it was gonna be, 60 cents or something like that? You said that?
Yeah, it was gonna be 4 cents less.
4
So
cents less than current.
than current, right?
Currently, it's what, Gloria?
69 something.
And it'll end up being just a hair less if you move forward with it. Not much, but
So that's the total rate.
right.
Round numbers, last year was 70 cents and was shy of 70 cents, and it's gonna be just shy of 69.
69.7.
Yeah.
There's a small rate reduction in that, didn't it, Todd?
Sure.
There's a small rate.
Small.
reduction, Yeah.
Very, very small, but some.
So and let's talk about this before we kind of go on. If you have any reservations to approving this budget, let's talk about it now before we get into this talking about it. And the whole rationale is then we have to look at something of one of these items that we need to cut. To not bond out that 16 million,
Right.
okay? Because it doesn't make any sense if we approve a budget, but then we don't support that tax rate to get it taken care of. And so I want to hash that out now and not when we're trying to figure out what the rate is so we can share with people. Okay.
I wish we could do more of these capital items, but I don't think that it's, it makes sense to continue to borrow above the existing tax rate. I like going a hair lower, but taking advantage of the, the additional revenue there.
Well, and you can allow some growth to occur before you go back out and do some bigger projects. You'll still have your $3 million a year. You wait a couple of years, see what your actual growth rate turns out, and then if it becomes, you have some more room to do some more debt, then you can do that.
It feels to me to be a very minimal debt increase plan that matches very conservatively with our growth.
You're growing it, 25 to 30% every year. You've got to spend some money just to keep the infrastructure in place. And you need more policemen, you need more firemen, you need more buildings, you need everything for it.
And the one thing I like about this is staff has looked at what our future needs are. It touches each part of our population. So we have something for our seniors to improve that center there. It has some safety apparatus, and protection. It has something there. If we lost that bridge because of erosion, like we have happened in Ovilla, that'd be a world of hurt for those people north of Pratt kind of coming down. For the training for the officers, I don't remember the specifics that Chief had shared with, about having to get onto the gun range to actually qualify and keep everybody current. And my gosh, if we're not staying ahead of that growth with the water, it's gonna be a world of hurt to everything. So I appreciate the staff looking at some type of component at each one of those and coming to us with a plan.
Right, and then, remember too, still, we still have the parks projects that we're doing through the Parks Development Fund and a little bit of the IDC. So we have those in there still as well, the ones we looked at last. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, and these aren't dropping off. For this budget year, we're trying to, we're gonna keep those on there and as we continue to grow, and if we continue with those businesses and we see more housing coming in and we're getting more property value up, then we're gonna just work down that list. So.
Your point, when I get a fire training facility, possibly still utilize that we might have for emergency driving of a fire. That building, ways that we've got in mind, with moving the walls for him to do some active shooters and stuff in, get a smoke sheet of a much less cost, still be able to accommodate some fire training at a lesser scale than we do with the fire facility. But we're still able to utilize that to the best of the ability.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And thanks for working together, not cutting out any donut machines or anything.
And
Save that for later.
And Mayor and Council, I would point out that investment in parks is almost $1 million out of park development fees.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not that it's just a few little projects. I mean, that's a major investment in our park system as well, including what was already funded as part of the general fund budget and the supplemental items. So IDC kicks in some as well, but it was a little over $900,000 of park projects.
Yeah, we're still getting a lot done.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, I agree. And I would continue to say that we need to keep tooting our horn on how fiscally responsible we are and hitting on stuff that we hadn't even touched about on those other projects that were in the workshop last time. So like specifically that animal control facility coming online. And everything else that we haven't even talked about tonight.
That senior citizen did it for me.
Did we decide a location on the gun range and?
Well, we have a couple ideas, but we don't have it timed down.
It would be nice to tell the citizens out there that we can drop it down, but tell me something on there that we couldn't cut. That we get rid of.
Let's go with what we got.
The 13 million water we have to have.
Yeah.
the senior citizens, that's an investment for them. And not only them, everybody, there's other people that use that building too.
Sure.
The Red Oak Road culvert, I'm sure we've done more damage on cars driving that road lately.
And it's just gonna get worse.
Yes, it's just more it rains, it's gonna get worse.
And it's gonna get to a point where we're gonna have to spend more money than we are right now. to
Yeah.
let it go.
I mean, like you said, with the fire engine, how long is it gonna take to actually get it?
Yeah.
So that'll be, 2 to 3 years, we'll be up and running over there at the new place, hopefully by then, or at least getting close to it. The bridge cut off what, third of your city over there if you lose that area? And the gun range, they need training. I'm in that boat of my job too. We don't have training. And it costs.
We could probably rent that thing out to other cities too, and make some money there, I think. Offset that cost. Have a city council. So,
We're still dropping it a penny, about a penny or so, something like that, right?
Less, it's not, no, it's not that much. It's
Wow.
like 0.001 or something like that. It's
Nah,
0.05,
easy rules.
it's 0.01, basically. Rounding it.
All right. Good, council?
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I do lament the loss of the concrete panels and the street improvements. Obviously, those dollar amounts are well within. Not a lot of swing, so I hope we continue to look at those. I think those will allow for a lot of more flexibility with their street repairs, so. Yeah, I know you know that in 1.5 million for the improvements we had, but the panels themselves having that flexibility, I think would be helpful, and like, 500,000 is findable throughout a year, depending on how things go, so. I do wish we could get that in, but I think the other things are more important.
But just a reminder from our previous workshop, we do have $1 million in streets. And we do have money in the budget for panel replacements as well. Yes, sir.
It's not that
Yeah,
addition.
This would be,
this
this
is
should be
just-
addition to that. So,
Right.
Thank you for pointing that out.
yes, sir.
Okay, so now we will move into regular session. And this will be, number 4, authorize a public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 proposed annual operating budget, setting a date, time, and place for the public hearing and directing publication of the budget hearing in accordance to state law.
Do you have a motion that you need for that one, Gloria?
So it's a public hearing first. You want to give us more background or?
No,
What do you wanna
we're-
do
no,
first?
this is not a
It's
public hearing.
authorizing.
We're setting the public
Okay.
hearing.
I see.
So,
You have
yeah,
it, Gloria, I'll read it. It's good.
well, I've got, it includes, the next motion.
This is that one on that Thursday, 31st.
So again, yes, this is to authorize the public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 proposed annual operating budget and setting that time, date, and place, and then directing that publication in accordance with state law. That motion is on the sheet being passed out as brought out. This is based, which we'll get to in just a few minutes, of proposing that tax rate. I'll make sure I have the right one because we discussed several here tonight, which would be 0.696886. So in that publication, we will show that the budget will raise more revenue from property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $3,836,119, which is a 32.88% increase from last year's budget. Of course, as discussed, that's because of that debt rate. The property tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year is $2,082,216.
That covers all three of them.
That is for the
That's-
public hearing on the budget. So that's basically what we'll be
Talked
publishing.
About all three of our items for the night.
Yes.
So-
A little bit,
Oh,
yes.
just, okay,
Just
tack
number
the
4.
public hearing. for-
Yes,
That's the content of the public hearing for next time. is
but-
what you're-
right.
Yeah, and 5 is just the consideration of authorizing staff and Hilltop to move forward with the plan of finance. We do, but it doesn't have to be a,
It's that top motion there.
So I'll entertain the motion.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'll make the motion. I just want to be sure August 14th, 7 p.m. is what we're proposing. So just, we want to have some discussion, right?
Second.
Like, I'll read it off.
you gotta read it.
I just wanted, before I set the date and time. Is that what I
That's
got
our,
here?
I
so
don't
that's
see-
gonna be before our regular meeting. Or it's at 7 and then our regular meeting is gonna delay 30 minutes or so.
We've got it to be included on the regular meeting on the schedule we gave you. It was before.
That'll
But
just
since
be
we've
part
been
of it.
able to work have all these items discussed tonight, unless there's any further discussion or another budget workshop needed.
So. It's sometime during the August 14th meeting
Right.
that we're gonna get to that.
So I see agenda item number 4 motion, I see agenda item number 6 motion, I don't see agenda item 5 motion. And that's the one that's just
It's
a
just
motion to
the plan of
authorize staff and Hilltop to move forward with the
Right.
plan of finance for.
For the
Issuance of
issuing,
obligation bonds.
Well, we can just make a ad hoc motion for that one, right? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. We're
But
good
that
with the
makes-
14th, that regular council meeting, right? That's the.
Right.
That's what we'll do. Okay, so I'll read this motion. Then. So I'll make a motion to set a date for the public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget for August 14th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Located at the Red Oak Government Center and direct public notification of the budget hearing according to state law.
Okay, Councilman Lightfoot first, Councilman Goodwin second. Those in favor,
Franklin, I.
Drake, I.
Lightfoot, aye.
Smith, I.
right, that passes 5-0. Item 5, and this would be, I'm gonna go ahead and read this whole thing. Deliberation, consideration of a plan of finance prepared and presented by Hilltop Securities and authorizing and providing authorization to staff and financial advisors to proceed to issue tax note series 2023 and to possibly consider publishing a notice of intent to issue certificate of obligation series 2023 for public purposes as authorized by home rule charter and state law. I'll entertain that motion to direct the staff to and Hilltop to proceed with these.
Do we need to specify the amounts?
yeah, so it would be the 3 million tax notes as discussed in the first budget workshop. And so that will be brought back to council to approve on the 17th, along with the budget and tax rate. And then the schedule for the additional,
14th or
14th.
it will be on the 17th to
So
adopt.
we have the public hearing and then formally approve the budget on the
Mhm.
17th, right? Is that what we're talking about?
And that's the one that we have on plan for 6:30.
All right, so, sorry, Gloria, so we need to specify the $3 million tax notes. What
Right.
else?
And then to continue with the plan of finance for the certificates of obligation series 2023. And then that amount would be the 31 million as discussed earlier. And that would be, so we do have a calendar for that. That one, the COs take a little longer as discussed at the workshop. And would be authorized a little later.
So this is all of the issued debt for this whole budget, not just these capital items we
That's
talked about
correct.
today, right?
That's correct. So it'd be the 3 million and the 15 million that had the fire station and so forth in it.
And the
Plus the
16 million
that we're
talking.
talking about tonight.
All right.
So can you make that motion?
I will. I just want to be sure we talk about it.
Okay.
If y'all want to first, make sure everybody understands that's where those numbers came from.
Yeah.
We good? All right, then I will make a motion that we direct Hilltop Securities and staff to proceed with issuing $3 million in tax notes and continue discussion on issuing certificates of obligation series 2023 up to 31 million in accordance with the budget that we've already reviewed. Is that good?
Second.
Did that sound right?
Am I good with that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
You would have noticed in fact on the 7th. Perhaps you see on the certificate, with the portal.
Okay, so we'll get to be real specific on the dollar amounts next. Time. Okay, got it.
And that was by Lightfoot and by Drake.
Yes.
Second.
Drake.
He beat you.
All right, those in favor?
Franklin,
Aye.
Drake, I.
The lights lit up.
Smith, I.
And that passes 5-0.
I'll read number 6.
Please.
Okay, number 6.
Well, you've.
Yeah, let me read it. It's the deliberation and consideration of a proposed tax rate for the fiscal year 2024. Take a roll call vote to propose said rate and set a date, time, and place for public hearing for the adoption of the proposed tax rate. And this is what we just talked about. Tying everything together. Now I'll entertain that motion.
Before you do,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
so it is necessary by state law for me to provide all of the rates to you and certify that I have calculated this as the designated employee on the comptroller's worksheet, using the same values shown on the city's certified appraisal roll. And so these rates, the no new revenue rate is 0.597659. Adding 4 cents to the debt rate to pay for the debt that we've been discussing will increase the voter approval rate with the 4 cents to 0.689042 and the de minimis rate to 0.696886. And you have the motion to propose the rate that is equal to the de minimis rate of 0.696886, made up of the separate M&O and debt components. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
No. Okay, so I move that the council propose a maintenance and operations rate of 0.440465 and a debt rate of 0.2256421 for the total tax rate of 0.696886 per $100 of assessed evaluation, and also moved that the public hearing of the tax rate be set for August 17th, 2023 at 6:30 PM located at the Red Oak Government Center, Red Oak, Texas. 101 Live Oak, Red Oak, Texas.
All right. That's Councilman Drake, second.
Second.
Councilman Franklin, those in favor.
I waited for it that time.
He didn't want it.
Can we-
Franklin, your vote.
Yes.
Drake, I.
Lights lit up.
Smith, I.
All right, that passes 5-0. Mr. Fuller, is there anything else that we need to discuss or any other closing comments on what we've kind of talked about?
I believe that's all I have. You know.
So what's posted is what we talked about with 15 million and the 16 million tonight will be posted, right? And the 3 million somewhere on the website that is in the newspaper. So, and
It will
who,
be updated tomorrow. So currently on the website is the proposed budget that was presented at the last workshop. That will be updated and then that will be published on Friday in the Dallas Morning News.
okay. I'd entertain a motion at 7:14.
So moved.
Second.
And that's Councilman Smith and Councilman Drake. Those in favor?
Franklin,
Aye.
Drake, I.
Lightfoot, I.
Smith, I.
And that's an adjournment. So thank you all very much. Thank you, staff, for your hard work and each department and staff.